Hello, welcome back to Lunchtime BABLing. So I'm by myself today, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about a question that I've gotten recently, both from potential clients and just people in the field, is about the global nature of compliance with AI regulations. So obviously, things like the EU AI Act is now going to be enacted. It's going to take a few years to get there, but there are lots of frameworks, NIST risk management framework, a lot of local laws that are coming up that are requiring AI governance, they're requiring testing. There's this, everyone's using generative AI now, and there are specific guidelines that are coming out around generative AI or multimodal models. And the kind of testing and red teaming and things like this. And so how is a company supposed to manage all of this, this globally? I think the short answer is that it's really difficult. However, I would say that not playing whack-a-mole on all of these regulations is the way to go. And it's actually pretty clear that there's a general trend in all of these, that there are common features. And so I think if I were to do one thing, it would pick the most stringent, which I think is going to be the EU AI Act. And it's going to get you 95% of the way compliance for all of these. And I think that's a better, more holistic way to approach this, because compliance is going to be difficult, but I think focusing on doing the right thing and managing the risks in a rigorous way is going to get you most of the way to compliance. And so all of them are going to require AI governance of some type. So this is committees, responsible people within the organization who are managing the risks of AI. They're all going to require risk assessments of some type. And the type of risk assessments that they're going to require, and I've talked about this on Lunchtime BABLing before, is that it's not a typical enterprise risk management risk assessment. It is more outwardly focused. So things like fundamental rights impact assessments or algorithmic impact assessments are focusing on how could the AI system affect the rights and interests of people who are interacting with it, not just in the company, but externally. And not just because of reputational risk, that clearly is a risk, but because those people have fundamental rights that could be infringed on. And so I think switching that mindset now and doing those sorts of risk assessments, having that kind of governance, and taking the results of those risk assessments and translating them into technical KPIs that you are going to measure and measure and monitor over time, and documenting that process, that gets you a huge amount of compliance for the EU AI Act, for NIST risk management framework. And the details, of course, are going to be different, and details are important. But if you focus on this idea that I want to ensure that the AI that I'm using or the autonomous systems that I'm using are high quality and are not likely to infringe on other people's rights or interests, and then thinking through that rigorously and documenting that and testing the things you need to test in order to ensure that that's not happening, that is the whole point. And you will be recording things in the right way. You will be thinking of things in the right way, and it will make compliance much, much easier. So my recommendation, if you're worried about global compliance, is to get that mindset and that process started before you necessarily create a spreadsheet with all of the EU AI Act requirements or the NIST risk management framework and start assigning people to specific things. Just make sure you've got the culture of this is the enterprise of responsible AI within our organization. It is to figure out where we use AI, make sure that we have people who are responsible for that, so make sure accountability is in place and governance is in place, and risk assessments happen and are done in a way that is focused on externally on people's fundamental rights, and then start documenting that process and making sure that the risk assessments are informing how you technically test that system and how you monitor and which metrics you're monitoring for, and then record that process and systematize that process in policies and procedures. Then you start worrying about whether what you did in detail conforms with the EU AI Act, because I can tell you it will. You just might have to write it down in a different way or compile a document externally in a different way. But all of those things are going to be required for all of these major frameworks, and any regulation that comes out will have all of those elements in it. If you do insurance, life insurance, and you're operating and you want to follow the Colorado law, that has a risk management framework, which essentially is what I just described. And so focusing on those core areas is going to get you the majority of the way towards compliance. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that briefly. That being said, I think there's a lot going on in terms of regulation, and here in the U.S., I won't say regulation, let's say standards. Here in the U.S., NIST is getting really active, and one thing I'm very excited about is all of the activities that the executive order that was recently announced is forcing in the federal government. And so there's sort of was a fact sheet that was released that sort of outlined all of the various things that were happening. But NIST is a major player there, and I'm super excited to see what they do, and especially around the measurement science of monitoring for risk, especially around things like large language models or multimodal, sort of more general purpose AI. I think this is a pretty exciting area, and it's a really difficult area. I can say, because we've been working on it for a long time now at BABL, really trying to figure out how do you do a risk assessment in a intelligent way for a system which is so general purpose. And I think the idea is you can't do a general purpose risk assessment for a general purpose AI. I think what I've come to realize, and I think everybody is realizing this, is that it's going to be really use case specific. And so I think we need to not abandon the idea of sort of like very general red teaming, for instance, or risk assessments for these models kind of globally. We don't want to abandon that, because there are security vulnerabilities which will be apply very broadly across use cases. There will be things like toxicity, hallucinations, or just providing wrong answers. I don't like that word, hallucination. But in any case, there will be some issues which are very broad and will apply everywhere. But for most of the risk is really about how it's implemented in a particular use case, and how it can risk can manifest itself in terms of the behavior of the algorithm. And the mitigations are going to be very use case specific. Exactly how people interface with that, what level of autonomy, what level of human oversight, what's the domain, and how effective is the large language model, let's say, in that particular domain. How well does the sort of information retrieval process work in that domain? Things like retrieval augmented generation. Those kind of risk assessments are going to be much more important, and really focusing on, for this particular domain, what are the risks associated with it, and then how can we track and measure. And so at the end of the day, people are worried about technical benchmarks. They're worried about having the right kind of data sets to monitor and track the behavior of these systems. But I think those benchmarks have to be use case specific. It might be that we can maybe make an industry specific one, like if I want to use it in financial services in this particular way, or customer service in this particular way, or maybe I've made an agent that's going to do some narrow task, but for that type of task, we might have a benchmark. But I definitely think that we're going to move away from just very broad benchmarks. They only go so far, and it has to be use case and definitely industry specific. So I'm excited to see how NIST is going to incorporate that and to handle that, because they are tasked with sort of coordinating this idea of coming up with a measurement science for these. How do we really measure the performance of these systems? And in particular, the ways in which they could be risky, because that's really what at least I am interested in ensuring. And so I think it's going to be an exciting time for the whole community figuring this out. So thank you for listening to my Lunchtime Babbling. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, could you like and subscribe? That would be awesome for us. If you're listening to this on a podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you again on the next Lunchtime Babbling.